There's been a lot of news recently about Microsoft and their strengthening partnerships with retailers, and it makes perfect sense, right? If you're a retailer or even a consumer goods company that sells into these retailers, you have to be thinking about things beyond just the IT that you're procuring or the digital transformations that you're embarking on. You have to think about when you're coming up with decisions around what platform, what cloud platform to use. Do you really want to give money to your biggest competitor, especially a competitor that's in the e-commerce space? And so if you're a Walmart or if you're an Albertsons or a Gap or any of these companies, you have to think about that when you're making your decisions. And Microsoft is very well aware of this. And so even just recently in their Q2 fiscal 19 earnings call, they announced a lot of wins, right? You've seen a lot of reports out there about these significant wins with Kroger, right? Which they're working on their retail as a service solution. There's a development partnership that's in place. They talk about Albertsons, which I just mentioned, which was a significant win in the grocer spot, right? Albertsons is the #2 grocer in the world. And that's really important, right? Because when they're thinking about it, it's not just retail, it's also groceries. Obviously, Amazon competes in the retail space, but they just bought Whole Foods. And so Albertson and companies like them have to think about this. When they're making investments about what platform, what cloud platform are they going to utilize to not only drive their digital transformation, but to ensure that the customer experience, the thing that they're trying to improve, to compete with Amazon, to compete with Whole Foods. The way to do this is we have to make sure we're making the right investments. And so when they go down this path, they're not only saying things like, hey, listen, we're going with Microsoft because why would we ever go with Amazon or AWS? They're talking about things like, hey, if you want to be a preferred vendor of ours, we prefer our software vendors to also be utilizing Microsoft Azure for synergies, but also to drive that impact onto their competition. Now, a lot of these retailers, they have to be thinking about things like I just mentioned before, which is how do we as an organization, how do we compete with Amazon? And Microsoft comes in and they build these partnerships on, hey, we have Azure, you should be building on that. 2, cloud productivity, right? We're already a customer of yours, like Microsoft is the customer for most of these companies already, but they come in and say, hey, look, if you're making investments in the cloud, if you're trying to improve the customer experience, you have to be thinking about AI. You have to be thinking about the Internet of Things. And that's where Walmart comes in. Last year, they announced a big 5-year strategic partnership, which was Microsoft 365. It was Azure, it was IoT, it was AI, it was everything. And their CIO came out and said, look, what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve the customer experience, the shopper's experience, #1. If we don't do that, if we don't digitally transform our business, we are not going to be able to compete. And so they recognize that. And Microsoft was right there. Hey, look at us, right? We're your long-standing vendor. We have solutions. We compete with Amazon. So let's get together and let's partner both to be driving your success, but also to think about that other side of the equation. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because what people aren't talking about is Google. Google is very smart. We've covered this ad nauseum, which is very simply, they have transformed themselves as well. They've brought in Thomas Kurian, former Oracle executive. They're trying to drive and ramp up their enterprise business. They just released their earnings. Now, they don't give out numbers or revenue tied to Google Cloud. Eventually, perhaps they will when they have more successes. But they talk about doubling the number of deals, doubling deals that are $1 million, doubling number of multi-year contracts. They're showing success. And if they really want to be successful, they have to look at the market. And they realize that retail, right now, for everything I just said, it's a one-stop shop. It is a one-vendor place, kind of like a monopoly. And they realize this. And so they're going to come in and be very aggressive competing with Microsoft because they understand that Amazon, in that space, retail, AWS, which competes with Google Cloud Platform, which competes with Microsoft Azure, that's not really an option. I mean, what CIO is going to go to their company and say, hey, look, I need $10 million, and the vendor that we're going to be giving that to is our biggest competitor? That's not going to happen, and Google knows that. And so Google is very aggressive, and we expect it to only ramp as they point their proverbial Deathstar and give that dollars and money that they have from their ad business, and they point it into the direction of enterprise to seize that opportunity. Retail makes the perfect sense. And so if you're an organization, if you're a retailer, even a consumer goods company that sells into these retailers, expect a heavy, aggressive Microsoft, but also expect Google to come in fast and furious in 2019 and into 2020. They're going to tie on to that digital transformation effort. They're going to tie on to how they can be the other option, an alternative to Microsoft. And we already are seeing it. Where we're seeing it most specifically is around first-line workers. Microsoft has spent a lot of time talking about, we've developed Teams, right? Their collaboration platform. We have Team for first-line workers. We have Office 365 for F1. We have Microsoft 365 for F1. Google understands that this is the untapped opportunity to get into these retailers. Because think about it, which industry has employee bases of a significant form that are first-line workers? Which one? It's retailers, right? The people on the shop floor, the sales teams, those individuals need digital tools. And there's an upswing right now to get them the digital tools that they need. And so if you think about how do we get in, how do we get into these retailers, it's not just the pitch of, hey, we're not Amazon, or hey, we're an alternative to the only other solution right now, Microsoft. The other pitch is, hey, we have a solution, the G Suite specifically, that these people at the shop floor, on the sales floors, they're already custom using. They're probably using it as their personal Google Docs and Gmail. So let us give you an opportunity. Let us pitch at least why we can be the solution for you retailers. So in summary, retailers, it makes perfect sense. Why would we give our money to Amazon? Most specifically, why would we go with AWS versus Azure Cloud? Why would we do that? And then Google understands that, hey, if it's only one option, let us be number two. Let us have a competitive environment. Let us drive that for you. Give us a shot. And then it's going to trickle down. It's not going to just be about the platform. It's going to very quickly turn, whether it's Microsoft to drive you from on-premise to cloud, and most retailers are already on cloud. It's to get them to go deeper with cloud from Microsoft. Microsoft 365. IoT, AI like Walmart, to be able to improve that shopper experience. And Google may not be able to do all of that, but Google can certainly come in and get an opportunity to talk about Google Cloud Platform and G Suite. And so if you're a retailer, or again, even a consumer product that sells into these retailers, you have to be thinking about this. You have to be planning appropriately. You have to look at the long vision. And so as you think about your renewals, or these meetings are taking place, does it make sense to at least give Google the opportunity? And if you do, running that competitive environment, which you are probably not used to doing because it's always been just Microsoft, you have to make sure you do it appropriately.